Welcome to the channel. My name is Dani Walker. Today I'll be sharing with you my top 10 silver evening gowns from the past 5 years at Miss Universe. In 2017, Panama chose a really unique silver gown. We don't see a lot of this style because she had this fully embellished top that was just covered in crystal stones, and then the bottom actually, to me, it's more of a white fabric, I think, but it's kind of on that edge because it is iridescent. This fabric was very reminiscent of the fabric that Venus Raj wore when she competed at Miss Universe representing the Philippines. And I think this fabric flows so beautifully on stage, and it's also very rarely seen. This is a gown that I think did not get its moment to shine due to the staging in 2017. I really wished, looking back, that they would have given the contestants a larger stage that is similar or comparable to a final stage. I think it does make a really big difference. In 2018, Vietnam wore a different evening gown for the finals competition, and I personally preferred her yellow evening gown for the preliminary competition, which you can actually see in the episode that I created about yellow evening gowns. But still, this was a really, really beautiful choice for a finale. I can understand it. I feel like it was a much safer choice, but the thing that stood out for me that made this gown extra unique were these strands of beads and how they horizontally were draped down the entire sleeve of this gown. That's just something that I haven't seen before on an entire sleeve. And so it was one of those things that really made it stand out to me. It was a nice touch. And like I said, I can understand how this was a finals pick for a gown. I was fortunate enough to attend Miss Universe in 2020, and I will never forget the moment during the final competition when Jamaica walked on stage because she shined so bright in this silver gown. The gown was very unique. What I liked about this one were the shapes around her waist. So it was almost like a very, very subtle and slight modified peplum. I feel like that's the best way that I can describe these pieces, but I thought it added a really, really nice couture touch. It just gave the gown a little something extra that made it stand out to me. But I will say this gown really, really picked up the stage lights very well, and it translated so well on stage. I don't think that when you see it on the telecast that the telecast does the gown justice. If you found my channel because you are preparing for your next pageant competition, then don't forget to check out my free pageant prep course that I linked in the description. In 2017, Angola decided to wear a heavily fringe embellished evening gown. This evening gown also reminded me of the fringe evening gown that Deshauna Barber wore to finals at Miss USA in 2016, which was designed by Sherry Hill. Personally, that's been one of my favorite Miss USA gowns over the past decade. I just thought it really stood out on stage, and this gown is no different. I think that this gown is a standout. The color looks beautiful on her. That silver really, really pops on stage, and it's Miss Universe, guys. It's just tough. So we see a lot of gorgeous evening gowns that go unplaced and unnoticed because of how competitive it is. Now, I will say in 2018, I wanted to show you this one as well. I had to because it is similar, but the neckline is very different. So Bolivia in 2018 wore a silver fringe bottom evening gown. I wanted to feature both here because honestly, I feel like it's a little bit of a tie because there are some similarities between the two gowns, but let me know which one you prefer in the comments. In 2017, Peru wore a silver evening gown that was encrusted in stones, and this gown is perfect for pageantry. I feel like when you choose a gown like this, you can't really go wrong with it. Anyone can wear a style like this and look incredible on stage. You're always gonna draw an eye by nature of how the gown shines. But what was really beautiful for me for this was how the back was shaped. And so they had this illusion panel in the back. The gown really drew her waist in with the structure in it. There was probably some sort of corseting or boning throughout this gown that gave it the structure around the waist. But then we still had a little bit of sexiness here and there with the cutout essentially, or that panel in the back, and then the low drop neckline in the front while still keeping it elegant. I think that if this gown had a slit, it would probably be a little bit much, but there was great balance here. In 2021, Peru wore an opulent and embellished evening gown that was quite unique, and what I really was drawn to about this gown was a modified overskirt, but I wasn't even sure if this gown was actually silver, so I went online and I found the designer, and his name is Jose Zafra, and I looked at his Instagram. So just to clarify, what we're actually seeing on this gown were these white embroidered appliques, but then on top of the appliques were silver stones and silver sequins. So this is indeed silver, but when we look at it from a distance, and I think just under the stage light, it could come across as maybe just nude or gold, but it is indeed silver. So that was something that actually surprised me, but I thought that this gown was definitely fit for a queen. Don't forget to comment your favorite silver evening gown that graced the Miss Universe stage. In 2020, Nepal was one of my favorites for the crown, and I think that this evening gown was so well suited for her. Honestly, when I saw this, I thought that she was going to advance into a semifinal, but I knew it was going to be very tight and very difficult to even get a placement that year because the ladies really brought it with their performances. This was a great stage pattern for contestants that allowed them to really show off whatever it was that made them special, whether it's the facial expression or a certain turn or a pose. It was a great year to see. Now, this evening gown, though, I think the reason that I like it so much is because it's on her. She has a very long torso and very long neck and chest, so this gown really helped to even make that more exaggerated for her. And when we got to see her over the shoulder look, it was just a nice way to see the entire gown. I also like the details of fringe that were just kind of draping and hanging off of the side. It just reminded me of just these diamonds just spilling over from the sides of the gown, and it added a little bit more movement to it as well, and it's just been one of my favorite silver evening gowns ever since I saw it. In 2017, Colombia wore a remarkable silver evening gown that was just encrusted in stones. She looked like a diamond in this. This was the perfect gown for her. I've talked about this in other episodes. I think that when a contestant has very dark hair, it's so complimentary to put them in a silver. It's just such a beautiful contrast. This gown to me does not look easy to walk in, though. I will say that. In order to hold up a gown of this weight with that many rhinestones, it looks like they had to use some pretty thick fabric to give the gown the right amount of structure. So this one looks a little bit tricky to me. If you know anything else about this evening gown, though, comment it below. I'd love to hear more about it because it really is a standout. I can only imagine how incredible it must have looked in person. In 2021, India, who won the Miss Universe title, wore a beautiful silver gown. I have to show you this other gown, though, that Puerto Rico wore in 2018 because for me it was really reminiscent of India's gown in 2021. The gown from 2018, though, was designed by Sherry Hill, and a very similar style was also used by Hannah Brown my year at Miss USA. If you guys are familiar, she ended up becoming the Bachelorette a few years later. And she wore a very similar style, although hers was nude and had some white beading on it. And we've seen this gown style several times, kind of reworked several different ways, but always I think it looks beautiful on stage. So when India came out in her gown that, like I said, to me was very reminiscent of this other one, I was very pleased, I was very happy. But the added embellishment of the waterfall beading down the front of it was unique and the perfect touch, and this extra bit of glam that just sent it over the top, and I absolutely loved it. The queen that takes home my #1 spot for evening gowns in the silver gowns category is 2018's Miss South Africa. This evening gown, much like I would say in 2017 how Demi Lee's evening gown was very celebrity red carpet-like, it was unique in itself. It's a gown that could have transcended from the pageant stage to the red carpet. That's how I felt about this evening gown. It's just something that we don't regularly see at a pageant, and it's bright, it is glistening, it had a very unique draped skirt that showed some leg, and so it created this slit effect, but not a typical slit that we always see. I think that this gown was difficult, though, to wear, so you could see that she was having some trouble when she was walking across the stage. She handled it very well, lots of grace, lots of poise. I'm curious, though, how much time she actually had to practice in this evening gown. Was she able to practice with the shoes she actually wore for the finals competition? There are so many obstacles that contestants face when it comes to wardrobe that I deal with on a weekly basis with my own coaching clients that you'd be shocked to learn about. And so I'm very curious about the story behind this gown and how long she had to practice with it, if any time at all, because that's also very likely. Sometimes things get changed at the last minute and you get a swap and you don't have time to practice in the gown. They just give it to you. So I'm wondering if that's what happened, but I still think that this evening gown was really one that I'll always remember because it looked like it's also made for the red carpet. If you want to see even more gorgeous evening gowns, then you're gonna want to check out this other episode about my favorite sheer evening gowns, because maybe I missed one of your favorites in this episode, but it could be in that sheer evening gowns episode. So go take a look at that one. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode, and I hope that you return with me next time.